Hey, what's up, fam? It is me, E. Davis, CEO of Writer's Block Publishing LLC. Please subscribe to my channel. You can find me on Instagram at Writer's Block Publishing LLC, Facebook, the same name, Writer's Block Publishing LLC, Twitter Block Publish, and of course, you can email me at writersblockpub@yahoo.com. I do a daily blog on WordPress, 1984.wordpress.com, I believe is correct address. I do apologize. However, last week I just briefly did a run through the Women's of Brewster's Place by Gloria Naylor. And I don't believe I did the wrap up justice because I was going back off of memories when I read it, um, maybe close to 20 years ago. Of course, I've seen the movie even prior to me even understanding or knowing that it was a book. I um, I don't remember where I got this book from. Maybe someone had given it to me years and years and years ago, but I did read it. And of course, and because the movie was produced, not published, produced by the legendary Oprah Winfrey, um, the book definitely, the movie definitely stays on course of the book. So I will definitely give Oprah kudos and credit for keeping everything in sync. There wasn't any extra pieces or um, anything that just didn't make sense with the time frame in the book. So I was pleased with it. I was able to follow along with it because you know how when you see the movie and then you read the book, um, is not, of course, is not the same. The book is always better. But I will say this much: whenever Oprah, um, since she's such a bookworm, whenever she does put together a movie based off of a book, everything is in sync. So, this is Oprah. So what I did was I wanted to actually do the book justice, do Miss Naylor justice, and comment on this book in order to celebrate International Women's Month, because this book is about women, and this book is by a woman. And as a writer, if someone was to ever do a critic or review of my book, I would want the same respect. So I reread it, and I just actually finished it today. And I actually really liked it because I was able to comprehend the symbolisms and the metaphors that she used to describe emotions between each character, to tell the story. And what it does is, beginning, it breaks down the characters. So you're not really shocked when there's a transition in characters. It tells you who's who. So first, because last week I did not remember anybody's name, just the stars who starred in the movie. Maddie Michael, she lived for her son, only to lose him and her home through the boy's cowardice. Maddie Michael was someone from the South. She was a daddy's girl, and she got caught up with the wrong guy, Butch Fuller, and she ended up having sex with him and got pregnant. And her father was livid because his precious baby girl fornicated. It was just, and he did want her to, of course, marry and have a nice future, but he did not like Butch Fuller, and Maddie Michael refused to tell her dad who the father of the baby was. So he got very belligerent and was beating her, and the mother had to intervene. And Maddie ended up moving in with one of her best friends, Etta Mae Johnson. Etta Mae was kind of a worldly woman. Maddie's long friend. She lived off of her beauty and her men all her life, and now faces uncertainty of old age. And a lot of women deal with this because they were born beautiful, where they can kind of maneuver and get over on anyone because of their beauty, especially with men. Men will fall at their feet and give them anything they want to, but as life creeps in and age creeps in, the lines on the face begin to creep in. Their beauty doesn't hold as much weight as it used to. Kishwana Brown, a young middle class would be radical, she changed her name in hopes of changing her background. Her real name was Melanie, and she was dating a gentleman named Abshu, I believe. She wanted to be Black Power, Black pride. And she comes from an upscale family, well-to-do family. And she was embarrassed because she didn't feel that they were Black enough. But her mother had to break it down to her, saying that just because we live this way does not negate the fact that we are Black or not Black enough per your standards. So that represented the Black Americans who actually did well, saved their money, and was able to move up in the world and be respected within all communities, not just the Black community, but the white community. They had good jobs. They know how to manage their money. They went to college. They had children. And that was the whole purpose of moving forward since slavery, since being past a sharecropper. They was able to save their money. They was able to do well. And a lot of the urban cities frown upon that because it's like you're not keeping it real, you're not down, you're not, again, at the risk of using a term again, Black enough. And it's unfortunate because why would I need to be living in a situation or living in the area to be accepted, to get the Black approval? Remember, we were talking about Zora Neale Hurston, and per the male writers, she's not representing the Black community enough because she's writing in this style, she's writing in this way, and that could be definitely discouraging. So Kishwana wanted to be Black enough. She said, I'm going to represent for my people. And her mother said, you don't have to represent in this way. You could represent by becoming a lawyer and helping the situation, by knowing the law. You could represent by donating to the proper charities to make sure that the communities are getting what they need. So I could definitely relate to Kishwana because my parents both grew up in the urban sections in Pittsburgh. My dad from Homewood and Wilkinsburg, my mother from Belsuver, and they raised my brother and I in East Hills. And one day, a good luck of fortune, my dad hit the lottery, made a couple bucks, and we moved to the suburbs of Monroeville. And per my urban friends, my parents were selling out. My parents were not Black enough to, I wasn't Black enough, and I became friends with all kinds of people, white people, Black people, Asian people, Indian people, Spanish people. I wasn't Black enough. And that definitely did hurt my feelings because I know my truth, I know my worth, and I became an active member with the NAACP, and it wasn't to prove my Blackness, it was because it was the right thing to do, because as a Black woman, there were things that needed to be done, that needed to get changed. And now as I stand here as a woman, 43 years old, I don't have to be, I could be unapologetically Black. I don't have to prove my Blackness to my white friends or to my Black friends. They just know me as a woman who happens to be a Black woman who will help out any cause when needed. I like to give to a selective amount of charities based off of the urging within my heart. So I definitely can relate to Kishwana. I would not have felt the need to change my name to connect to my roots, but you know, some people feel the need to do so. Next on the list is Lucille Louise Turner. She loses one child to a tragic accident and another by a doctor's hand. So this was a situation where she entertained a man just for the sake of entertaining, hoping that things would get right. She had a baby by the name Serena, and then of course he was never happy. He was never satisfied, and from reading it, it was of course things within himself. And we women deal with that as well. They don't want to be lonely. They want the child to at least know who the father is. They're hoping that when money gets better, things will get better. And we all know that's really not the case. So he blamed her for the fact that she's pregnant again when it takes two to tango. But he lost his job, and he made a statement, you're not good for anything but babies and bills. I thought that was a very harsh thing. That's on a sense of emotional and verbal abuse. A lot of us women deal with that, where we feel bad because they're unhappy. So what we do to make things right. And what she did was she ended up getting an abortion. And she, that's that's a very touchy subject. I personally am pro-life, but I would never condemn someone who feels to need to abort their child for whatever the issue is. If this is what you feel is right in your heart, then so be it. I just know me, that's just something that I couldn't do. But she did abort the baby, and then in the midst of an argument with her man, her other baby dies. And of course, that is the ultimate heartbreak. I thankfully never had to experience the death of a child. I couldn't imagine that pain. And she was actually killing herself slowly. She was just in a state of shock, state of mourning. And it was actually Maddie. Maddie, in this book, in this hence raised her. Maddie ended up moving in when her baby was born with Miss Eva. Eva was raising Lucille, known as Seal, with Maddie's son. They were growing up more like brother and sister. And of course, life happens and everybody goes their separate ways. And Maddie was bringing Lucille back to life, where she just wept all night. And that's, of course, a purging process when you're in a state of shock or in a state of mourning. And that's also unfortunate when we women give ourselves over to the hands of a man where we don't have anything left. Or so life happens, because in the book, not only does she abort the baby, but her other baby dies and her man leaves, leaving her really with nothing. So she had to leave to kind of find herself, to get back to herself, or find who she actually is. And sometimes we need to do that as not really as women, but just as individuals. Next on the list is Coralie. She loves babies so much she has 7, only to lose interest in them as they grow up. Baby fever. A lot of these women have a lot of people have baby fever. Babies are cute. They like to snuggle. They like to cuddle. They smell fresh. They smell clean. The laughter of a baby is always a beautiful melody. But then as they grow up, they become independent. The word no. They become rebellious and defiant. And us mothers sometimes want to throw our hands up at our children and said, I'm done. And why can't they stay this small forever? Well, because that's the circle of life, because none of us stayed small forever. And she had an affinity for baby. She just wanted a baby, and she loved baby dolls, and she just liked the way they smell and liked the way they looked. And without having discipline, she was having baby after baby after baby, and it was getting older, and the older they got, the less she began to lose interest in them. It also happens with a lot of us women. We feel the need of being wanted, of being needed, so we'll have these babies. And when the babies begin to grow their independence, begin to gain their independence, we lose the lack of interest in them. And we lose ourselves, because we are not allowing ourselves as women to grow and allow our children to gain that independence, because that's really what we want. We want to bring forth life so they can bring forth life. And Lorraine and Teresa, roommates and lovers, their happiness is destroyed by rumors and the act of brutal violence. So this deals with the concept of homosexuality as well. 2 women, Lorraine and Teresa, were girlfriends, lovers, lesbians, and the ignorance of those of Brewster's Place wrongfully condemned them for who they are, instead of accepting their character, which forced an act of violence with them. And it's a type of hate crime. Hate crime isn't just racially related, it's also sexually related, if that's the way it's supposed to be said. It's when I read it was very troubling, because I have friends who are gay, lesbians, homosexuals, whatever you want to call it, and it's sad when they're judged based off of that, instead of getting to know the person and really respecting that person for who they are. This was definitely a heavy book to read in all of these little pages. And again, the metaphors that Miss Naylor used to describe the emotions and the feelings was very, like, I can definitely stand to learn a lesson in this. And this is what I like about the book. There's a preface, dawn, okay, the early morning, and it's written in italics, just kind of break away to give you a sense of an introduction. And then we see how each character is introduced, Maddie Michael, and the chapters within that section of the book. So as it goes on, you see chapter 2. And you see the top right there is still Maddie Michael. So when you're writing, if you're stuck on how the format of the book should go, this is a cool idea to write. It breaks down the history of each character, and then it goes into the present as how they're dealing with living in Brewster's Place. Brewster's Place was a condemned neighborhood that the landlord refused to fix. The heat wasn't working. Sometimes water wasn't working. And Kishwana, and how she began to want to help the individuals. Excuse me, I'm about to sneeze. How she wanted to help the individuals was she was putting together a tenant society and creating a strike to refuse to pay rent until the conditions of the buildings was up to code. So towards the end of the book, she arranged a block party to raise money for a lawyer. And again, that's how she was able to help the Black community. Not denouncing her background because they came from a well-to-do family, an established family. But she had enough sense to say, you know what? This is how I can help. And that's what she did, which I truly, truly, truly admire. Now, this book ends the way it started, from dawn till dusk. So I really, really like that. And then the final character was Ben. Ben was a type of what would you call that? Maintenance man. He kind of stayed drunk. He kind of was like the old drunk. He was a very nice guy, and he met his demise because of the actions and the mentality that Brewster's Place created, birthed out. Ben had a daughter, and his daughter was lame. Excuse me. His daughter had a bruised foot since birth, and his wife verbally abused him. So men do know that with the wrong woman that you're with, men could be in an abusive relationship as well. Oh, excuse me. Men could be in a situation where there's no hope. And his daughter ended up leaving to what I believe to a life of prostitution, a life of escorts. And I'm not going to give you too much information. You should definitely take a clue and read this book as well. But he drank to escape from the pain, using substance to escape. And of course, that's not a healthy way of escaping. But at the risk of rambling on, excellent, excellent book. And if you've seen the movie, of course, it's an excellent movie, but please take a moment to really read this book, because again, it does break down the psyche of each woman, and Gloria Naylor uses metaphors for that. So to wrap up the International Women's Month, I am beyond blessed and honored to have read this book. I'm going to actually Google Miss Naylor to see what else she got out there. Maybe I can check it out and read. Next month, actually tomorrow, is the first day of April. And from my understanding, it is National Autism Awareness Month. I do have family members that do have autism, and we are going to be reading Of Mice and Men. I'm looking forward to it because I've read it years ago, and to not repeat the same mistake twice, I'm going to read it again, because when you read something again years later, you see it differently. You have a better understanding. You may have met individuals that you can relate to, so you can understand the book. I remember when I was 19 years old, I first read Waiting to Exhale. And that was because Angela Bassett was new on the scene, and I still am one of the biggest fans of Angela Bassett. But when I read it, it didn't make sense to me. Why are these women boo-hooing over these guys? Just meet a new guy and move on. My mother said, because you're young, you don't understand. So now that I'm older, I kind of get it, where you just want that man to want you. You want that connection. You want that feeling. So now, if I take a look if I read Waiting to Exhale, I may see things differently. So that's why I'm definitely going to take some time to read Of Mice and Men. So that's something you're interested in reading. Definitely read it with me, and we will definitely tackle the concepts of autism and also discuss some of the writing techniques, such as the one that we saw in Miss Naylor's book. So I hope you guys have